Welcome to episode 1 of Sicilian Day, where I will share with you the system I've been using for the last decade to easily defeat the Morra Gambit. This one comes from a game I played on chess.com actually earlier today, and in this one the first step is to play the Khan Sicilian sub with e6 and a6. So if white plays bishop c4, which is what most Morra players will do, then we can just go b5 and gain a tempo on the bishop. But it's after bishop to b3 that the real trick becomes apparent, because what most people do is they play to move bishop b7, but then white will get quite good compensation with some knight d5 sacrifices at different moments and trying to bring the piece in the attack this way. But we play to move knight c6 instead, and after castles the idea is that we play knight to a5, going after their bishop on b3, where if white were to play some move such as queen e2, which is a move that a lot of Morra players will play without thinking, like queen e2, rook d1, open the center with e5. Well, now you might see the problem here, that when they do play the move e5, well, we haven't played the move d6 yet, right? So they can't open the center so easily, meaning that we just got a beautiful knight, or if they trade, a beautiful bishop on d5. The d7 pawn is not a weakness, we're just going to castle, and black will be a pawn up and have the bishop pair for nothing. That's why in the game my opponent lemon lime knight, which is actually I can get the Australian reference to lemon lime and bitters, one of my favorite soft drinks. But yeah, bishop c2, we play bishop b7 now. And the point of forcing the bishop back is that now the knight d5 sack is nowhere near as effective. For example, if white were to play knight d5 now, we would just take and just play, for example, bishop to d6. And we're blocking them from being able to play like a d6 and start to attack. We're just going to develop our knight to f6 and just be a piece up for nothing here. So that's the first point. They're not getting their usual knight d5. I already mentioned the other point about e5 being ineffective, which is a point we'll see in the game where white played the move rook e1. And I have to admit, rook e1 kind of makes things a little bit easier for us, so I'm going to return back to this point at the end of the video, just after I show you the full game. But if you are enjoying the video, then do make sure to like and also to consider subscribing for more of my free best opening weapons and seeing how to win with them in your own games. So after rook e1, rook to c8, so this is the next point. We develop our queen side first and only then the king side. So that way we're not giving them a target with, say, knight f6, e5 or something. In the game, white played bishop d2, which is a little bit of a passive move. I think that probably the move knight d5 is going to be a bit of a better try. Because now, at least if you take, like, now you're sort of helping white just get the attack going. This is an example of, what you don't want to happen when you're black. You don't want to give them the attack. At the same time, knight d5 doesn't actually threaten anything, so you can play around the knight with a move like bishop to d6, for example, and then go for, like, knight e7 and get your king castle, then that's going to give you a pretty steady advantage as such. I mean, you are also kind of threatening to take the knight, as we saw when we block with a bishop. It takes the sting out of white to play a bit. But if they have to move the knight away, that's obviously not what they were really going for when they played knight d5. And, well, after bishop d2, I actually ended up playing a second game against this guy. And in that second game, I actually improved my play a little bit and played the move of knight c4 first. And kind of did it in this version. Well, I remember in that game he played b3 and ended up getting in this really cool trick of bishop to b4, and it just was really hard for him to defend his knight on c3 from the attack as such. So that's even better than what I did in the game. But the good news is the setup I played is still going to work almost no matter what they do, in fact. Where I played the move of knight e7, just going for knight g6 and just playing to develop the pieces this way. I think I was playing this game while live on the stream, actually, because I think if I wasn't streaming, maybe I would have considered, if not knight c4, maybe bishop c5 and then knight e7 as a bit more of an active way to get the pieces out. But, okay, I went knight e7. He decided not to play b3 and kill the knight. He went queen e2 instead. Here I did actually make a little bit of a miss, like I was probably talking about something and, yeah, just completely forgot I can just win the bishop. But, because I'm kind of used to normally bring that bishop more actively than d2, but... Okay, this ended up being missed for a couple of moves, but fortunately for me, even with missing the free piece, the position is still going to be completely winning for black. Where what I did was I was able to just eventually take on f3 and just be up 2 pawns for nothing here after knight e5. And he tried to make some sort of tactics work here with like taking and everything. But I was able to fend off the attack, like just bring the pieces in, and around this point, once I get in B4, which finally I saw this idea. Yeah, we're just taking the knight because if the knight moves, we're going to have rook C1 to pick up material that way. So yeah, basically that was how this game went. So I won in a few more moves that admittedly are not the most interesting, but we can play it out just so you can see. Eventually is able to just pick up a ton of material and he resigns in this position. So that gives a pretty clear idea of what we're aiming for against the Benko Gambit, where to recap, it's basically going for the current Sicilian start with e6, a6, b5. And I think you'll notice kind of chasing after their bishop with knight c6, knight a5, and if they don't let us take the bishop, we just develop the queen side and then develop our pieces, castle, and just be a pawn up. Sometimes you can go knight f6, sometimes you go knight e7. It kind of depends a little bit on what they do as well. You kind of have that flexibility to make their setup rather ineffective. Now, I did say before that it is better for white here to play to move queen e2. So I do want to just quickly touch on what to do if they do play something like rook to d1, for example, and kind of go for the normal Morra setup. It's also worth pointing out if they do play some moves such as bishop f4, for instance. You have a few good setups, like you can go knight f6 and again just meet e5 with knight d5 and kind of just neutralize their attack by using the d5 outpost to your advantage. Also, if they play a move such as, bishop g5, trying to get the development fast, you can play bishop e7, because again, it just kind of helps you if if they take on e7, it just means you're developing faster. And knight being on g6 is just really good for neutralizing any attacks with e5 by shutting out the bishop, as it were. But after rook d1, I think the move that I've tried different moves here, but the one that appeals to me the most is the move bishop to c5. Just a nice active diagonal for the bishop. If they try to attack with knight e5, just knight f6, and you can obviously they don't really have a follow-up here. We just have a really solid position, and their knight's kind of getting kicked around, which is not so great for them either. Like say, knight d3, bishop d4 is just giving us an extra pawn, but also really nice pressure here. So they might instead try to develop or try to attack in some way, but if they go bishop f4, like once again, we just have this option of knight e7 that we saw in the game. We can just go knight g6 and just completely neutralize their attack, like say after takes and queen f3 and castles. White's e5 pawn is a weakness, the b2 pawn is a weakness, and white just doesn't have a sliver of an attack to work with against the black king because the knight is such a good defender on g6, and the d7 pawn, it's on d7, not d6. It means it's hard for him to really open up the lines to our king. So if they do play moves such as e5 first, trying to get an attack going, if you're a very advanced player, this is a move you'll probably want to commit to memory, because it turns out that if white can get the knight into d6, they're actually going to have pretty decent compensation for the pawn here. But with the move of f5, we just fought those plans where if they don't take on passant, we just go knight e7, castles, and we're basically just a pawn up for nothing. And if they do take on passant, then you just take back and you castle on the next move. And you're not just a pawn up, but you also just have very good piece play. Like your bishops are really active, and in fact, making it almost black by the lead in development. And so a position like this one, is just going to be just comfortably better for black. If they swap, we don't really mind because the exchanges just bring us closer to a winning endgame anyway with the extra pawn. So with that, you can basically see that this is a very simple yet very effective system against the Morra Gambit. And if I had to give a tip for Morra players from white's point of view, the move bishop c4, even though it's the most common move by far and the one that nearly all of the books mention, it's actually probably a little bit of a mistake here, and it's probably better to play a move such as bishop to f4 and kind of try to use the d6 square, or play bishop e2 and try to play more passively. But such approaches also aren't really in the spirit of the Morra, like you're kind of playing more just for a long-term positional compensation and playing purely for equality, rather than trying to sort of attack the opponent with these kinds of ideas. And for that reason, they're not really so much in the spirit of the opening, and even if you just play normal developing moves as black, you will at the very least equalize very comfortably against such setups. So that's all I have on how to easily beat the Morra Gambit. Do let me know in the comments below, what you liked about this video, if there was a particular move or a particular thing I said that really struck a chord with you. Definitely keen to find out about that. And it's also a good way just to kind of improve your chess faster if you kind of take one of these lessons and you actually put into your own words some of the things that you got from it. There's a little bit of a super learning technique for you there. In any case, so that was episode 1 of Sicilian Day. I'll be back with episode 2 of Sicilian Day on Thursday. Well, Sicilian Day is Thursday on this channel, and it'll allow you to make sure whenever you face E4 that you're playing the very best weapons against it, so you can get the best results possible with the minimum amount of work. All right, see you in the next one. Take care.